afternoon. How many passwords do you remember? If you're like most of us, you're logging into hundreds of sites every week. But instead of remembering different passwords, you're either writing them down, storing them in a spreadsheet or a password manager, or you're using the same passwords to log in everywhere. It's not your fault. Passwords themselves are fundamentally flawed because they pit our memories against machine brute force. And that's a battle we are eventually going to lose. My name is Byrne. I'm the co-founder and CEO of CLEF, a replacement for all of your usernames and passwords. CLEF recognizes you based on your phone. Walk up to any computer in the world, point your phone at the screen, and you're immediately logged in. It's safer, faster, and much easier way to log in. How many of you have ever heard of two-factor authentication? For those of you who haven't, two-factor is when you log in with a username and password, and then before you're logged in, you get a text message with another password which you have to type in before you're confirmed. If you're like most of us, by the time you finish that process, you've walked away to go do something more interesting with your life because it's really frustrating and slow. Even so, the two-factor market today is worth $3.3 billion. And that's all happening within financial, government, and corporate logins. So much so that 75% of consumers have never used it. But passwords aren't strong enough, so the places where we need it, two-factor has been an important way to protect people today. And it's coming to consumer sites. In 2011, LinkedIn had the biggest password breach of all time. But since then, we've seen 2 password breaches every day. And as a result, companies like Twitter, Dropbox, Apple, Microsoft, consumer-facing companies are all adding two-factor as an option. But it's incredibly painful to use. CLEF offers the same level of security as two-factor authentication without the hassle. The New York Times said, with CLEF, the often painful process of logging into a site feels, admittedly, a little bit magical. It was echoed by The Economist, BBC, LA Times, Pando Daily, Inc. magazine, and a slew of others. How many of you have heard of Cloudflare? Cloudflare is a billion-dollar security company that powers more than 5% of the web's traffic, and Cloudflare recommends CLEF to every WordPress site in their network. With recommendations like those, we've been able to see phenomenal growth. We launched CLEF in June of last year, and it took us 16 weeks to sign up our first 100 sites. But in February, we crossed 1,000 sites using CLEF, and today I'm excited to announce, this morning we crossed 4,000 sites using CLEF for their logins. Thanks. I wouldn't have been able to do this without my amazing 2 co-founders, Mark and Jesse. Mark came from Ning and does mobile development. Jesse worked at BuzzFeed, does web and integrations work. You can follow us on vator.co/clef or send us an email at vator@getclef.com. I'm looking forward to y'all's questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks. So, what do you guys think?
Nicely done. Is it optical? How does it actually work?
Yeah, so it uses the phone's camera to grab something we call the CLEF wave.
So
we show a little code. You point your phone at it.
You have to install something that like turns the camera on, so it's monitoring.
Yeah, it's an app for your phone.
Can you solve the problem of logging into services as well as logging into the computer itself?
Yeah, so we actually do this for websites. So it's not just logging into the computer, it's actually logging into sites.
So for each, I want to log into Salesforce, I just wave it like that?
Exactly, which is why 4,000 this morning sites are using it for their logins.
What's the integration process? So if I'm a site.
So it's the integration process?
Yes.
So it's OAuth, so it's a single line of JavaScript on the front end and then easy handling on the back end, about an hour of developer work.
Why not just do it as a browser plugin like LastPass?
So we actually, a bunch of our users built a browser plugin, which you can use to log into Facebook and Twitter and all the sites that haven't integrated. That piggybacks on the old password system, which is much less secure. With CLEF, we can make the whole system a cryptographic handshake that's a lot safer and a better authentication system. But we have to work with the sites individually to make that happen.
So are the sites that are using it exclusively, or do they use any
There's a mix.
multiple authentication process?
It's a mix. So the bigger sites that are using us tend to offer us as an option. They have passwords still, but the users who are more security conscious or who want something easier can use CLEF. But for small sites that want to, they've actually made it the only way to log in. And I'd say that's probably about 40% of our sites are on exclusively CLEF.
So walk me through the user experience. So I'm a user. I download the CLEF app. What happens next? What do I do?
So we set up a key pair for you. So a key lives on your phone and one lives on your phone.
Sorry, I'm just an average consumer.
Absolutely.
I don't understand what that means.
So that happens in the background. Just so you know, nothing happens. You see the CLEF wave. We walk you through the first time you scan it. Basically, we show you a wave on your computer. You point your phone at the screen. The lines on your phone drip off and drip onto the screen, and you're logged in. It's very quick. We've
But
associated.
how do I have to set something up, right?
Right. So the first time
walk
you
me
log
through
into
that.
a site,
Yeah.
we either associate with your email address, the existing email address that we had for your account for CLEF, or when you log in, it'll ask for your username and password that you used to use so that we can associate your CLEF ID with the new account. I'm sorry, that was a little bit jumbled. But basically, you scan the wave.
So sorry, I downloaded the app, I went on one of your publisher sites, and what happened? What do I do next?
You see the wave, you line them up, and
But
you've never
you
used
don't know who I am.
What?
You don't know who I am yet. I just downloaded
Right,
the app.
exactly, which is why we then ask you to log into that site the way you did before,
Okay.
and then we associate your CLEF login with the old account.
Okay.
For every subsequent time, you mean?
Exactly. So from then on,
Right.
you just use CLEF.
And the code is it's basically a barcode.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Animated barcode.
Right.
Why not just use like a QR code, standard QR code?
It's all about the user experience of understanding what's happening. In the first prototype we did of this, we used a QR code, but people had a really hard time understanding how information was moving. It seemed counterintuitive that moving information from the screen to the phone would log you in on the computer. With the Wave, we're able to make it a sync, where there's matching pieces of information, and when the animation happens, you see information move from your phone to the computer. And that's much more
It's
intuitive.
like a queue for the user.
Exactly. So it's all about the
how do
user
you
experience.
envision ultimately turning this into a business?
So we this morning signed a $1 billion hedge fund that will be using it to power all of their internal logins and the logins for all of their investors. We're talking to several wealth management companies, healthcare companies, education companies, a lot of players where two-factor the traditional way has been too expensive and especially too expensive on the consumer retention, and something like CLEF that we can offer for cheaper and in a way that their customers actually like is a much better option for them. So we'll be charging the sites to let their customers log in this way.
How much?
We charge about 10 cents per user per month, which is about 10% of what the traditional solutions cost, because they focus on corporate logins, whereas we can have a customer log into 10 different sites and so can make money off of them 10
It's
times.
10 cents per active user per month.
Exactly.
Per logged in user per month.
Exactly.
So of the 4,000 ones you've signed, are you actually collecting revenue from them, or are those free?
So a lot of them are very small and fall in a free tier for us. We're collecting revenue on a small percentage of them, the 25.
Okay.
So with the hedge fund, they're paying you like what, like $5?
So they're paying us about $100 a month.
Okay, so it's
So it's
different.
still small, but it's for us, a client like that's really important for levels of trust, right? There's a huge amount of money at stake, so it's important that we work with someone like that, even as they have fairly few customers.
Yeah. And so how many logins did you do last month?
Last month we did about 50,000 logins.
What do you, I mean, if you assume that either Apple or Google built something in natively into the operating systems, I mean, how would you envision competing with that? It seems like the kind of thing that maybe should be a native function.
Right, so I think that, right, absolutely. So I think that this is something that Google and Facebook and Apple will need to think about, but what's challenging for them is that they have to have all of the partnerships in place to make this work everywhere before they can release it. So whereas we as a startup can start tiny and grow to domination.
Thank you so much. And
Awesome.
Here's a consolation prize
Wine.
for at least getting to this point. That's a real big deal.
Thank you.
You beat out 150 companies to get up here.